Hey everybody, welcome to Workforce Gaming. I'm Brad, here with Doug.
Hey.
We were sent over a code for the new re-release of Tomba, which is a game that you have mentioned to me several thousands of times over the however many years we've known each other. It's a PS1 game, and it's a platformer adventure. I honestly don't know anything about this game. You kind of go like, but Tomba, and then I just go, okay, whatever, let's talk about Tomba again. So this is something I know you were really excited because it's getting re-released through, I think, Limited Run Games.
Yeah, so actually I played this game for the first time, I'd say like maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It's like when I played it on Vita. So I was like going through a bunch of PS1 games and played it on Vita. And at the time, I really, really loved it because for a number of reasons I'll talk about in a second. But this playing it now, it made me realize a game gets outdated the second another game comes along that does something similar but better. Yeah. And the first time I played Tomba, however many years ago on Vita, was just like it held up in a lot of ways just because there was just nothing like it on the market. But now, because I can point to like 4 or 5 other games that are like similar to it now that didn't exist prior to when I played it, it's hard. It's much harder going back to it and revisiting it.
So what exactly is it?
Yeah,
because if it was unique 4 or 5 years ago and now it's this like known quantity, like what happened in the 5 years?
Yeah, there's not a name for this genre, but I call them chore ventures.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so like games like The Tourist, A Short Hike, Little Gator Game. Yeah, exactly. There's just like, besides, there's maybe one other game, but like that's basically it. It's like this very, very small genre of like high level. You just kind of go around, you kind of get random missions for people, you pick up items and you do those like little missions for people. Yep. And the story is really light and it's a lot of just like exploring and wandering around. So this game, like, it's like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if the people played whoever did The Tourist definitely did. But like, I don't know if the people who did like A Short Hike and Little Gator Game had played Tomba necessarily. But it feels like the precursor to all of those types of games. Yeah. So Tomba is just like, it's a fun little idea because I always like games where the main character is like doing something selfishly for themselves and just kind of helping people along the way inadvertently. So the character Tomba is like a little gremlin boy who is kind of similar to like Tarzan or like from the Jungle Book, who's just kind of like a crazy sort of swinging from vines. And he gets an amulet stolen by these evil pigs, and by defeating the evil pigs, he ends up like, helping the rest of the world, sort of thing. But the thing that's kind of interesting about the game is that it's a 2.5D game, which was popular for a hot sec during the PS1 era. Not super popular now. I
feel like it comes and goes.
Yeah,
there'll be like a 2-year strand where it's like, look at all these things, then they'll disappear for a few years, and be like, but now we're back, and then they'll disappear.
Exactly. Yeah, but like this very specific one where it's like 2D characters on a 3D plane is but it's very similar. It's a 2D game. I guess you could kind of call it like similar to Castlevania. But the thing is, the game, you run, jump, and the thing is like it's like an open world game. So it was funny, part of the special edition is that there's actually like in interviews from like the guy who created it. And he was talking about like, well, previously in these types of games, you go from left to right, and then that would be it. But in this game, he wanted to like kind of go loop back around and go like be able to go back and forth on all the levels. And if you went left to right, you'd eventually run into some sort of block, and you have to figure out a different way to go. So it's this kind of unique open world where combat isn't the main focus. Although this did make me feel like I love games like A Short Hike and Little Gator Game, but if those games just had a little bit more combat, I know not those specific games, but it is kind of fun doing these sort of adventure games with like a little bit of combat. So you go around, you pick up missions from like random people or random happenings. Like you'll see an odd thing and like, oh, this will pop up. Like, okay, this is now one of my missions to. For example, there's a monkey that lost its pants in a windstorm. Another one is like there's like literally hundreds of these things. Sometimes it'll just be like a mysterious bush. It'll be like mysterious bush is now the mission, and like you don't know what to do at that point. You'll probably not have the right items or whatever, but it just kind of gets added to like a list of missions you have. And then so you kind of like wander this open world, collecting new items, opening chests, and it'll get stuff like more health, or you'll get a better weapon and this sort of thing. It's really cool because you do really get to explore this world, kind of like as you sort of go back and forth throughout it, because you're always looping back on it, because now I have a new power. It's like, oh, I can get up on that ledge. Again, it sounds very similar to Metroidvania, but it's not nearly as
well, because you're not combat focused. You're not combat focused. You're much more. It seems more open ended. Like you can kind of. Could you like blitz through this game in like an hour and a half if you just were like, here's the main thing, do the main thing?
If you knew what you were doing. And that's the thing that's like really tough about this game is like, I do not like going to guides, but man, Tomba is like, you end up getting so many of these missions, it is impossible to figure out which mission you should do next or which are the important ones.
Oh,
or
it doesn't designate.
Stuff. Yeah.
It doesn't designate. No, it doesn't. These are the prime. Oh, okay. So like, yeah, and because it's that short venture, it's like getting this guy his coffee and mowing this guy's lawn. Like one of those is the important one.
Yes. But exactly. But like again, it's like giving a guy coffee or mowing his lawn. It's like which of these sounds more important?
Yeah.
And there's just like really no rhyme or reason. Or suddenly like. There's this kind of interesting way. So like they'll have these 4 types of chests throughout the world, and as you progress, you'll get a key for one chest. You go, oh, I can go back and get those chests. Oh, I got the second key. I go back and get those other chests I saw, and those will have important items in it. So it's like really unclear of like if the important items in a chest, the important items in a mission. And just get an idea of how old this game is. Like they're not even called missions; they're called events. And when they're actually when they're interviewing the guy, he's like, "Oh, we have the primary events and then the sub events." It's just kind of fun, like kind of seeing like games before the common nomenclature was there.
Everybody kind of got to pick their names for things, and it wasn't like just call them quests.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Or missions or whatever they're called now. But yeah, no, it's. I think the thing I really do like about the game though is that it has those like I feel like this is really missing from a lot of games. We've talked about this recently, like the chaos of older games, where it's just like a bunch of weird random ideas in a world that like barely makes sense. So like for example, like the bad guys are pigs, and instead of just like you can punch them, but like the main way you battle is like you jump on their heads, you bite their heads. And then you kind of jump up and do like a spin in the air and then throw them in like whatever direction. But that's like his main attack. It's like biting people on the head. You also like bite people on the head to learn languages. Like there's these gnomes that you meet early on. And then you bite one on the head. It's like you learned gnome language 1, level 1. And you have to go find other gnomes to bite on the head to then learn their language. Other fun things is the inventory, like canonically in the game, is that he's swallowing all these things and they're just like in his stomach. So like some characters are kind of like freaked out, like when you like throw up a bunch of baby chicks because you're collecting baby chicks and you like bleh, like throw them up sort of thing.
Does it play heavy? Like, is it like heavy comedy game? Like, is that what it's going for?
Yeah, kind of. But the thing that it's funny with how people are weird about translations these days about like, oh, it's not like exactly what it was in the Japanese sort of thing. It's like, you want to play exactly what was in the Japanese game, go play a PS1 game. And there's just not a lot of flavor. It's just like very literal of what's happening. So there are funny bits, but it's not like cleverly translated into fun jokes and stuff. And that's the thing, like, they're going to be releasing Tomba 2 eventually. Tomba 2 is like way worse about that, where like the Tomba 2 translation is so flat. I end up like not even finishing Tomba 2 because it's just like it was just such a flat translation of just like literally what's going on. So you're like in this fun wacky world, but the writing, because it's 1996 translation, is just like not there.
Yeah.
There is a world where there's like a new Tomba and they retranslate. It's like really fun and kooky. But I mean, the game is really silly. Like one of the first things you run into is a plant that looks like a butt. And you're like, okay, I mean, it's not really a butt. And then you jump on it and then it farts. It's like, okay, I guess it was a butt.
Here's where we're at. All right, we're starting here.
Yeah. And then like the world just has like a lot of like, there's like a forest made of pom-poms. There's like these flowers that like are laughing or crying. So it's this kind of really cool I wouldn't say it's psychedelic because it's always like, oh, they must have been smoking something. It's like, well, no, actually they have a really short documentary about, like I said, the making of, and the guy's just saying, he's like, well, before I just had like 100 ideas for stuff.
Yep.
And he was talking about like he had to build the game around having all these ideas. So it's all these like really weird random stuff that's put in there, which is nice and fun. But like it doesn't really congeal in it. But again, I like that sort of like chaos of older games where it's just like it doesn't all fit together because it doesn't really have to. Like, okay, there's like a gnome village, and then like and there's like a village of like people who are mice, but they were turned into mice, but like unrelated to the gnomes, and like none of the villages like connect at all. Like they connect like physically, but like nobody's ever talking about other villages. It's like, okay, this area is the gnome village, and this is what they talk about here, because it's just like, okay, the guy had an idea for a gnome village. It is a little like, it kind of sucks in that like going through it again, I just wasn't having nearly as much fun. And again, it was because it was like one of those like it was sad to see it go kind of thing. It's like, well, I'm glad the legacy was taken on, but this thing is no longer as unique as I would have liked it. I also say that as a person who played A Short Hike, The Tourist, and Little Gator game. It's not like
you played very specific games, very specific smaller indie games. That follow this concept. It's not, because that is interesting. Because I think like a general audience probably hasn't experienced at least all of those. Maybe you've dipped into like Little Gator. I think probably got the most press out of all of those. I feel like, but if you're just playing, kind of your standard big releases, like something like Tomba is like. Sounds like one of those things where it's like, oh, this is like this crazy old idea that just kind of got left in the dirt and we moved on from it, when there's really this kind of underground, like this like weird little indie scene that's kind of like following through. I'm like, oh no, these are kind of fun just to kind of play around and explore the world and just do little menial tasks to learn about the world and figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. And there's like I said, there's like literally like maybe 4 or 5 of these games that at least I'm aware of that are in this genre. So it's like if you're interested in that genre or you've never seen that genre, I think this game is gonna be like really cool. It does have like a lot of PS1 jank, but I don't know. I think it's a fun time. Like I said, like when I first played it, like blew my mind. It's just like this like really crazy, and that was only like again like 5 or 6 years ago. But I think it's just like revisiting it just because the world keeps turning.
Yeah.
Do you think it's kind of where I landed with it?
Is it partially too that what's coming? Because I feel like a lot of these games, it's like once kind of like the rhythm and you've seen the things, like it kind of loses that. I feel like, especially more lighthearted, like comedy, like games that are kind of going that where it's like rewatching it kind of. It's like, okay, I know the jokes are coming. Like, can we just get to the part where you say the line? Just say the line. Like that line makes me laugh.
Yeah, exactly, because I think the world is so chaotic. Because while this game isn't necessarily funny, it has a really chaotic world, and finding and exploring that chaotic world is really cool.
Yeah.
But it loses that. And I think it is part of that. Like I'd be curious, like I think if you did this review, it'd be like the jumping sucks, because it's terrible. And I don't know if I could easily recommend it to people. It does have a rewind function, which is nice. But yeah, I think it's because a lot of the game is kind of based on that surprise of how weird it gets.
Yeah.
So me having gone through it, it's not as surprising. So now I'm just like looking at this is just kind of an old game that kind of reminds me of stuff. But yeah, I think that's actually a good point. I think if somebody went through this with fresh eyes, I think they'd have a really fun time, especially kind of seeing like a cool. I think the PS1 library is like incredible and like really, really underrated. There's a lot of cool, weird games out there that people have not discovered. I'm waiting for people to discover Silent Bomber. That one is super cool. Nobody talks about it, and it will never get re-released. It wasn't even re-released on the PS3 store. And I was just like, ugh, it's such a cool game.
Go to your local game store and find Silent Bomber.
$300 to get Silent Bomber.
Those are always fun. Those are fun ones. Those are the ones that need to come back, because I'm not paying $300 for nothing.
Yes, exactly.
Anyway, we are Forest Gaming. You can leave a comment below. Subscribe to our channel. There's a link to support us on Coffee as well. We'll see you later.
Bye.